So I want to thank everyone for coming early on a Tuesday morning for Breakfast with the Expert. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have a topic that you would like to see or hear about, we do this every Tuesday morning at 7:30. And again, I'll ask Tom to try and do those for you. I'm Lisa with Recruiting for Growth, for those of you who don't know. But with that, I am just going to turn it over to Tom. And Tom, do you want everybody muted, or do you want them to jump in each as they have questions, or put them in chat? How would you like to handle it?
I think this is going to be really, really informal.
Okay.
And, I would be happy to have people chime in, ask questions as we're talking. I do not have a slide deck. I just figured that I would do a 60-minute lecture and, sit back and take as many notes as you want. And I saw Lisa got a look on her face of pain. So I was joking.
Like, how do I tell him? It's 30.
Yeah. We were talking a moment ago about the power of stories, and one of the things that I talk about with my clients, and I'll finish this thought, and then I'll sort of tell you a little bit more about myself. One of the things that I tell a lot of my clients is it's important to understand the difference between a lecture and a story, or a treatise and a story. I think that most marketers, especially when they are trying to blog or send emails to provide what they consider to be valuable and useful content, will lean into writing posts that are what I would call treatises or lectures. Here is my knowledge, here are 7 tips about such and such, and all of a sudden people are tuning out. It sounds exactly like the stuff that the next person down the block was putting out there. Nobody pays attention. Prospects tune out, they yawn, they don't open your emails, they don't they're not attracted, they're not engaged, and certainly they are not inspired to act. So what we're going to talk about today is how to get prospects, first of all, how to attract them, how to keep them tuned in, and ultimately how to inspire them to act. And my name is Tom Ruwitch. I am the founder and the president of Story Power Marketing. And Story Power Marketing is designed for the purpose of this talk, to help businesses attract leads, keep them tuned in, and inspire them to act using the power of story. I'm going to pause and say, hello, Gerard. It's been many years. I'm very glad to see you. Gerard and I used to serve on a board together in Aim High St. Louis, and it's very nice to see you. Surprise, I'll start with a story. I was working with a client who is a business coach, works with senior executives on a variety of topics. And I asked her to draw from her experiences and tell me a success story that she has had with one of her clients. And we were doing this for the purpose of drawing out content that she could put on her blog. And one of the stories she told me was about an executive who had been running a business for close to 15 years and had never is not the right word. In 15 years, he had not taken a vacation. His last vacation was 15 years ago. And just this year, about a month or two before the pandemic hit, this guy took a vacation for the first time in 15 years, and he had a ball. And I said, well, tell me more. What's the underlying story here? She said, well, the story is that he didn't take a vacation because he never believed that the business could operate without him. He always felt like things would fall apart. When he took that vacation 15 years ago, it was a disaster. Employees were calling, what should I do? This is happening. He was firefighting while he was out in the mountains somewhere. figuratively firefighting, not literally firefighting. And when he came back, everything was a mess. People were annoyed. It was just a complete cluster. And he was terrified of doing it again. He just realized, I can't go on vacation. It's just going to be a giant stress fest. And so this coach sort of dug into the problem. And the problem, as you can guess, is that this boss sort of had that everything depends on me syndrome. He was not good at delegating. He was not good at sharing responsibility and building teamwork. And this is right in this coach and consultant's wheelhouse. This is the stuff that she teaches. And so over weeks and months of working with this guy, she taught him how to delegate, how to train, how to systematize the business. And it got to a point where those things were done, and this guy felt confident enough to go on vacation. And he went on vacation, and he had a ball. And our responsibility at Story Power for this particular client was to actually ghostwrite the content on her behalf. And so we wrote a blog post that started out, that effectively told that story, that said, I know a guy who runs a business who was always terrified of going on vacation. He feared that this would happen and that would happen and blah, blah, blah. Told the story pretty much the way I just did. And then after telling that story of the guy who was terrified of going on vacation, she wrote, "Sound familiar?" And it does sound familiar. It sounds familiar to all of her prospects. When I walk away from the business, I feel stressed. Whether it's a day off, whether it's a week off, I feel stressed. And if she tells that story and it resonates with somebody who reads it, that's a person who could benefit from her services. And by the way, that's a person who's going to read the bottom half of that blog post, which said, the key to him having a successful vacation was learning how to delegate and systematize his business. And here are 5 tips on how to go about doing that. And oh, by the way, if you'd like some help doing that and diving deeper, call to action at the bottom of the post. Here's how you can contact me for a free consultation, and we can do some work together. So the really interesting thing about this story is we wrote the blog post for her, and she had engaged us a while ago and had done many, many blog posts over the years or over the months before she hired us. And after I sent her this draft blog post, she said, "I love it, let's publish it." She said, "Oh, by the way, I wrote a blog post on the same topic that we published about 3 months before we engaged you." And one of the catchphrases, one of the tips in this blog post was delegate, don't dump. And which is a great tip. When you delegate, you're empowering, you're training, you're not just abdicating responsibility, you're doing what you need to do to successfully pass the torch. And I said, "Oh, wow, well, you already wrote about this. Maybe we shouldn't publish this post." She said, "Oh, no, I can tell you, go read the post. We're going to publish your new post." And so I went and read the post, and the post started out something like this. To operate a successful business, business leaders need to appropriately delegate tasks to key team members. By delegating tasks to team members, you are able to share responsibility and blah, 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 blah. That's my lecture delivery voice, right? And she understood immediately that the exact same set of tips, the exact same coaching message was completely ineffective when delivered as a treatise or as a lecture, her old post, and completely effective when delivered as a story. And so we did publish that post as a story. We published it and she got great response. I believe that she got a client, or certainly she had some engagements and some calls following the publication of that post. And that just underscores the primary point that I try to bring to my clients. Number one, or primary points. Number one, people remember stories. When you tell stories, people remember them. I'm not sure how many people are off camera. I see a bunch of people on camera, but in the chat box, type a yes or a Y if you're familiar with a book called Made to Stick, or have heard of Chip Heath. He and his brother, Chip and somebody else, Heath, wrote a book called Made to Stick. Highly recommended. Great book. Chip Heath is a professor at Stanford, and the premise of Made to Stick is, why do messages stick? Why do some messages and some advertising and some political ideas stick while others don't? And what Chip Heath did is, in his class at Stanford, he ran an exercise at the Stanford Business School. He ran an exercise in which he had everybody prepare a presentation. And the requirements for the presentation are that it could be on any topic, and that it must contain at least 3 statistics and at least 1 anecdote or story. That's all. That was the boundaries of the requirement. And they were 5 or 10 minute presentations, I forget. So over the course of a couple of weeks, the students all did their presentations. And then he broke, he waited for some time, and then he gave a pop quiz on the presentations. And the results of the quiz were as follows. 5% of the people who sat through these presentations were able to recall a single statistic correctly. 95% of the people, now I'm sitting here giving statistics and telling you that people don't remember statistics, so there's irony here, but there's a moral to this story. 95% of the people who attended the presentation could not remember a single statistic. 65% of the people who sat through the presentations could recall the key details and the morals of the stories. So there's a little science that underscores the idea that stories stick. We remember stories. It makes sense. I don't have to tell you that for you to understand that. We know that because as somebody was saying earlier, we grow up with stories. It's been the way that information has been shared for millennia. In the Bible, Jesus doesn't say, let me, share with you a lecture. He's telling stories, parables, fables. We as young people learn important life lessons from fables, stories. We remember them. They can be passed on for generations. Here's a second thing. A neuroscientist named Paul Zak, I believe his name is. I'll make sure that I get the correct name, and there's a link to a really good video presentation that he shares. Paul Zak and his research assistants conducted a study in which they proved that when we human beings hear a story, our brain releases oxytocin. And oxytocin is a hormone that is often called the love or cuddle hormone. Basically, what oxytocin is a feel-good hormone that creates feelings of well-being, love or appreciation, and cooperation. So, put in a more simple way, when we hear stories, we feel a bonding with the person telling us the story. That too makes sense to us, right? That too is something that we understand. And then the third thing is that a market research team did a study on ads on an auction site. I don't know if it was eBay or something similar. And they ran split tests, 2 versions of ads for the same product. And one version of the ad used some sort of storytelling to describe the product and pitch the sale. The other version of the ad simply talked about specifications and perhaps a couple of feature details or benefit details, but no storytelling. And in all cases, the story-driven, story-powered advertisement generated significantly higher sales than the ad without the storytelling, and were able to demand higher prices than the ads without story. So 3 things. When you use storytelling in your promotions or in your content that really is ultimately leading to calls to action to draw people into whatever product or service you're selling, you can expect that your prospects are going to remember the content significantly better, that they are going to feel a greater sense of connection and bond to you, and that you're going to be able to command higher prices and expect to sell more as a result of incorporating story into your work. Now, the last point that I'd like to make, and then we can just have a Q&A. And Lisa, I apologize. I know you told me this, but remind me how much time we have for this.
We try to keep it to 30 minutes. If you
30
need
minutes.
a little bit more with questions, we're good.
Terrific. I'll dive a little deeper, and then we'll open up some Q&A. So the last and probably most important ideas that I want to share with you are, number one, when we talk about storytelling, we are not talking about you telling your story about you. So many business people I work with, when we talk about storytelling, will say, well, I don't have anything interesting to say about myself. And I have 2 responses. The first response is good, because we're not here to talk about you. The second response is wrong. Everybody has something interesting to say about themselves, and there is a place to share your story, but that's not the predominant idea behind storytelling. Storytelling, in the context that we're discussing it, is about your prospect's journey, your customer's journey. The blog post that I told you about a moment ago, that is a consultant telling a story about a customer. And in telling the story about the customer, the prospect is saying several things. Yeah, that's me. I can relate. This person understands my experience. My experience reflects the CEO business owner's experience. Number 2, this person, the consultant, as a result, gets me, understands where I'm coming from. And number 3, the expertise that this expert has brought to this business owner's story would be relevant to me and my story. And so what we sell is not a product or a service. What we sell is the prospect or customer's journey from a before state to an after state. And that's the key idea of storytelling. The before state, so tense and wrapped up in the business, so convinced that the business will fall apart if I don't leave, that I can't even take a short vacation. The after state, had a great vacation, no longer tense and uptight when I leave. And in the 50 weeks a year that I'm not on vacation, the place is running better, there's better teamwork, people feel more empowered, the business is running more smoothly because, fill in the blank in the middle, products and services provided by Coach enabled me to get from before state to after state. Your business is about the prospect's journey from one state to another. And the stories you tell should evoke that story, should promise that story, should explain how that story can happen. The second important point that I want to make is I told you a story of a business owner who was frustrated, who was tense, who was hassled and harried, problems. And when I go through the various exercises of how to help business people discover their stories, or more specifically, discover their prospects' stories, we talk a lot about what are your prospects' problems? What keeps them up at night? What do they dread? Who is the enemy? And when I talk about these things, a very, very common reaction that I get is, I don't want to go there. That's fear-based marketing. And fear-based marketing is manipulative. And I want to address that idea because it is probably the single greatest barrier to successfully telling stories and using storytelling in your business. The difference between manipulation, parentheses, bad, and ethical persuasion, parentheses, good, is intent. I'll repeat that. The difference between manipulation, unethical manipulation, and ethical persuasion is intent. Now, Lisa is a criminal, so I'm not talking to Lisa. Now, and people are wondering, people who came on later wondering what the heck I'm talking about, but inside silly joke. But the rest of you have a product or service that provides real value to the customers who partake. You are ethical people, you are providing a service, and as a result, the people who will buy that product or service are benefiting from it. If that were not the case, you should not be in business. If that were not the case, you are a criminal. Whether technically or just ethically, you're a criminal. But you are not criminals. You are providing a valuable product and service. And as such, you are giving a gift to your prospects when you take them by the hand and lead them across that bridge from that before state to that after state. And not only, here comes a double negative, not only is it not unethical, or not only is it not manipulative, one could argue that you sort of have a responsibility and that you're letting the prospect and the customer down if you don't do everything in your power to help them, to move them along. Okay, so that's one point about the whole persuasion thing. You're not being manipulative. The second thing is, if you really want to tell your prospect story, you have to meet them where they are. And like it or not, a lot of your prospects are in a state of frustration, in a state of fear, in a state of lying awake at night wondering how to fix a certain problem. And as was the case with that business owner, Richard, people don't build kitchens because they want to go from great kitchen to super great kitchen. They build kitchens because they're frustrated with 17 different things about their old lousy kitchen. And if you, as a business person, are unwilling to meet that prospect where they are, stuck in their frustration, and talk about that frustration, and then not wallow in it, not magnify it, not create false fear, but acknowledge fear and frustration, and then help them discover how you can take them from that state to a better state. You're not going to be telling stories that are relevant to them. So those are two biggies. There's a whole lot more I could tell you about storytelling, but I think that's a good place to stop. We're 25 minutes in, and I would be more than happy, as long as Lisa lets us, to just have you dive in. Go ahead and unmute, or Lisa, if you control those levers, unmute. I'm happy to just open up the conversation and answer a few questions.
I'd like
I've
to jump
unmuted
in.
everyone. Well, no, I haven't. Sorry, go ahead.
No problem. So just a comment and then a question. The comment is basically one of the biggest things that helps it makes sales easy is referrals. And I think oftentimes referrals are in the form of a story. You know, this person helped me, right? So that a testimonial is really just a story. And
Right.
those are often the hottest leads because they're already warm, they're already open, and they've already heard that you solved someone's problem.
Right.
But my follow-up question is just, if I'm starting in a new field and I don't have my own stories yet, should I sort of ask my colleagues for their stories, and then I can sort of do what you did at the beginning of this and sort of talk about someone else's story?
Yeah. So I cited a case study, and the story that she drew on was in effect a case study as well. But there are countless ways to get to the prospect story. I'm going to share with you one really good example of this. There is a copywriter, a guy named Ben Settle, and Ben is an acquired taste. I'm not necessarily going to recommend Ben because Ben has a tendency to offend people, and you have to be sort of committed to a certain intensity of your marketing. Writing daily emails is Ben Settle's thing. But Ben tells a really great story that answers your question. He was hired to write copy for a weight loss product. And this weight loss product was targeted at women, but not women who were sort of in that, I weigh 150 and I want to get to 130 or 120 range. This thing was targeted at obese women, get from 300 to 200. Okay. And this guy is kind of a guy's guy. And when he retells his story, he said, I can't just sit at a computer and start to write copy targeting this market. I don't know this market. If I start going all, as he said, going all Ben Settle on them, they're going to tune out. So what did he do? He went out onto the internet in search of this community and this market. And one of the places he landed was a website literally called 3fatchicks.com. You can go find it today. It's not a derogatory thing. It's not mocking anybody. It was created by 3 fat chicks to create a safe place for other fat chicks to hang out, trade stories, trade tips, have fellowship and community, and improve their lives. And there was an open forum on this site, and he spent time reading through it. He found his market, and he found what they were saying, what they were feeling, what were their stories. And one of the stories he found was a woman who said, you know, I'm making progress, I'm feeling good about myself, but my so-called friends are sabotaging it. And the story she told was the fact that ever since she had lost her first 20 or 30 or 40 pounds or whatever it was, her friends were going onto Facebook and posting old pictures of her 70 pounds heavier or 60 pounds heavier and tagging her. So putting out to the world, you know, fat pictures of me. And she was distraught. It was a terrible story, how my friends sabotaged me in my effort. And Ben wrote a sales letter for this product in which he retold that story. And it was the most successful sales letter for any industry, for any client, for anything he's ever done. And it's a really good lesson to answer your question. You don't have to have a running history with your market, your clientele. Ben certainly didn't. He went out, found the market, drew great stories from the market, and wrote a powerful story that yielded better than any letter he ever wrote. So,
well, they couldn't be too much of their friends if they posted pictures about them like that.
no, I mean, there's a lesson, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think but there it is, Richard, right? We all can relate to this idea that, you know, who are your friends really?
Yeah.
When you're really in the fight of your life, and for these women, the story was, this is the fight of my life. When you're really in the fight of your life, who are your friends?
Yeah.
And this was a great example of a writer who was not part of that community really getting at one of those key heartfelt ideas. And in so doing, you know, everybody who read the stuff, you know, when you push those emotional buttons and tell a story that really hits the heart, no one is going and reading the deep details of the specifications. Oh, okay, this is using 5 milligrams of ginseng root and blah, 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 blah. The product sells itself. Now that underscores the point I made previously, that you have to believe that the product you're selling is real and valid, and that you're delivering on the promise. If you're in the business of making false promises and then using stories and so forth to trick people into taking some product that's not going to benefit them, that is manipulation. That is criminal. But in this case, that story alone, that letter sold so much because all you had to do is say, I get you. I know how hard this is. I know how your friends can sabotage you. And this product is, you know, you'll show them, take this product and, you know, you'll get the last laugh. That's what that letter was. And that hit a chord. So what else?
Tom, we're a few minutes over, but one of the stories that I have heard you tell multiple times and which always hits home for me is the Rosetta Stone ad.
Yeah.
Would you share that, or can you share that quickly?
So it would take me too long to share that. So Lisa, you and I have had questions or have had conversations about pitching.
Yes.
I made reference to the idea, you know, that blog post about the executive going on vacation. Tell the story. That's a lead into tips. Then have a call to action. Call me to have a free consultation to lead into consulting. So I'm going to use your question as a segue to say, I do a free training where I talk about a masterpiece advertisement that happens to be from Rosetta Stone. And I dissect that ad, and in so doing, I really lay the foundation for how to do story-powered marketing. and how to really get at this business of understanding your prospects and building stories. And so right now I have 3 of these free trainings scheduled: tomorrow, Friday, and Monday. And so if you go to storypowermarketing.com, storypowermarketing.com/free training, storypowermarketing.com/free training, you can sign up for that free training. And I just can't do it justice in a minute, Lisa. And so there's my shameless pitch.
I'm glad it worked that way.
Yeah. By the way, I'm sending an email today. If you're not on my email list, please go to storypowermarketing.com and sign up for the email list. Speaking of shameless pitches, I'm writing an email today where I'm ripping an article that I read in Entrepreneur Magazine, where the person said the best way to do content marketing is be sure that you don't pitch. You know, don't put calls to action in your stuff because people don't like pitches. Terrible idea, terrible advice. And I unpack that. What people don't like is content that is irrelevant, and all it is hard pitches. I have just the ticket for you. Here it is. But if you provide relevant content, especially in the form of stories, and then say, oh, by the way, if this journey makes sense to you and you want to avail yourself of it, here's the next step. Same idea I was talking about. If you don't have a call to action, all you're doing is leaving people who would benefit from your service. You're leaving those people wanting. If you do tell a story and the content is relevant, and then you say, oh, by the way, here's the way you can learn more, here's the next step, you're doing them a favor. You're letting them take that first step across the bridge. So.
Thank you. And I will say that of the many newsletters that I get, yours is one of the few that I read each and every time, except when you're calling me out as the criminal.
Well, I didn't name you in that. Yeah. So thank you for that. I'm grateful to hear that. And that's the point, you know. It's about entertaining and informing, and stories do that. Lectures don't. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much for doing this.
I'm grateful to you, Lisa, for doing this, and these breakfasts are a great service. And to all of the people who are here, thank you for being interested in this and for spending time with Lisa each week. And finally, also, go ahead and email me directly, Tom@StoryPowerMarketing, if you have any questions. I'm available, and I would be happy to pick up the conversation with any of you who want to follow up with me. So.
Super. And you had mentioned maybe doing something on subject lines. Can we get you on the schedule for that?
For another breakfast?
Yeah, in the future?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to be releasing a variety of short trainings, some free, some for sale. But regardless, when I work up some new subject line content, Lisa, I'll let you know. And even if it's a for sale product, we'll do a session where I make where I share some or even all of the tips that I've put together.
That'll be super. Thank you very much.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Thanks everybody for coming. I will upload this to YouTube, and I will let you know when that happens. It should be by the end of the day, and that way you can go back and listen to some of Tom's tips, and be sure and reach out to him personally. I have had the luck of hearing him speak in the past and taking advantage of that 30-minute free session. And I will be signing up with him, but be sure and reach out to him.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very good this morning. Enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Yeah.